stop it already. I just packed everything up. Now I'm gonna have to repack everything from scratch. My husband, laughing heartily, kicks my suitcase. Thinking this might be the last day I see your face, it kinda makes me sad. Just hurry up and pack your things and get out of here. Although my husband is all for the divorce, he keeps getting in my way. When did he become such a malicious person? Oh, finally divorcing this eyesore of a wife? I'm really glad. I've been fed up with you since the day we got married. My mother-in-law continues to taunt me cheerfully. I've just finished packing my things now. I'll be out in 10 minutes. Saying this, I make a call to someone, and exactly 10 minutes later, the house intercom rings. When I open the door, there are several large trucks and a sleek black luxury car. We've come to pick you up. Are you ready to go? Yes, thank you for coming all this way. I'll leave the rest to you. All right, says the driver, and the muscular men from the waiting trucks begin to move my luggage. From a distance, my husband and mother-in-law, with their mouths agape, watch cluelessly as my belongings are carried out. Hey, I thought you were moving. Why is a luxury car picking you up? Seeing my husband's surprised face, I smirk and open my mouth. My name is Madison, and I'm a homemaker. Originally from a small town, I moved to New York when I got married. My husband's name is Roy. We met through a marriage arrangement set up by our parents and have lived happily in a town near his parents' home. Before marriage, I worked for a trading company but resigned at my husband's request. Although I worked part-time at a small company for a while, I eventually quit due to childcare and other responsibilities, and now I spend my days dedicated to household chores. We have a daughter named Amy. After graduating from college, she started living on her own because her job was far from home. When she was younger, I wished she would grow up quickly, but I felt unexpectedly lonely when she actually left home. At such times, I routinely contact my parents. My parents live far from New York, and I haven't visited them for many years. However, we keep in touch through video calls and texts, and though it's been years since we last met, we're still close. My parents are traditional shop owners. Though their business is small, they have a good selection of local products, and I fondly remember buying souvenirs there. My husband and I are just an ordinary couple. He earns the money, and I take care of the home and our child. We both accepted our roles without complaints. However, since our daughter moved out, I've noticed a change in my husband's behavior. Initially, he was as considerate as a gentleman, always complimenting my housework and giving me flowers on anniversaries. But now, he treats me almost like a maid. He must be stressed from work, I thought, assuming his mood would eventually improve. But taking my silence for granted, his attitude only worsened. Any small mistake would prompt him to call me useless, and if I talked back, he'd retort, "Who do you think provides your meals?" And when reminiscing about the hardships of raising our daughter, he'd say, "Looking after children is your duty, of course it's hard." When I relaxed in my pajamas after a day's chores, he'd mock, "You've just become an old woman." And unfortunately, it's an old habit of his, but when he gets emotional, he becomes violent. Our daughter has seen this too often, and he's excused it as discipline. Once, our daughter tearfully told me, "Dad doesn't help with chores even on his days off. It's sad seeing you work so hard." I tried to explain that we each have our roles, but she seemed unconvinced. Thinking back, I've never seen my husband help with any housework at home. Moreover, using his busy work schedule as an excuse, he has never been involved in raising our daughter. A normal father would at least attend his daughter's sports day, no matter how busy. But my husband never participated in any school events, and it was always me who made our daughter's lunches and captured her school moments. He didn't even bother to take photos with her during her ceremonies. Because of how my husband was, in stark contrast to my good relationship with him, a deep rift has developed between him and our daughter. Since she started living on her own, she often checks in on me, but I've never once heard her ask if her dad is okay. That alone proves it. Lately, my husband's verbal abuse hasn't just targeted me but has extended to my parents as well, which is troubling. The other day, I was talking to my husband about how my parents were doing. My mom called earlier, and guess what? My dad tried to lift something heavy again and hurt his back. He's over 80, I wish he wouldn't push himself. Hope he gets better soon. But, man, they're still running that little shop? They should have retired a long time ago. His demeaning words caught me off guard, and I couldn't help getting a little angry. Hey, what's with that tone? They may run a small business, but they're working hard. Well, it's just not feasible to do business in such a remote area with only family. The products aren't even that great. If it's just a hobby for their retirement, fine, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just a failing small-town business. He smirked and continued to sneer at my parents' work. I just wanted to express my concerns about my parents, but I never expected to be mocked to this extent. Looking at my husband's face, I was reminded of his mother. When I first met my mother-in-law, I thought she was a refined woman, much like my husband. However, as our marriage went on, she began to show her true colors. Now, the house where my husband and I live and my in-laws' house are about a 10-minute drive apart. Taking advantage of this, my mother-in-law comes over unannounced to criticize my parenting. When my daughter was a baby, she insisted on homemade baby food and disposed of the store-bought food. When my daughter reached school age, she brought over brochures insisting on certain high schools. Of course, my daughter rejected every suggestion from her grandmother. If it were genuinely out of concern for her granddaughter, I could understand, but it wasn't. Every time there was a family gathering, she would compare my daughter to other grandchildren, mocking her by saying, "I can't believe she can't even do this, she must not be from our family," and grinning when my daughter got upset. Essentially, she enjoyed tormenting my daughter for not living up to her expectations. Since then, I've been keeping my distance from my mother-in-law. That's what happened today. Even if we're doing business in the countryside, there's no reason for her to say those things. It really gets on my nerves. The night I argued with my husband about my parents, I waited for him to fall asleep, then called my daughter to vent. Lately, every time my husband lashes out, I call my daughter to keep my balance. That guy would say something like that. And he doesn't even care about Grandpa, just spews insults. Isn't his attitude getting worse? Are you okay, Mom? I chuckled inwardly when my daughter finally called her father that guy, feeling the disconnect in her emotions toward him. But since she's entirely on my side, I chose not to say anything. My parents, unlike my in-laws, never belittle her or impose their ideals, so she loves her grandparents. However, she's quite worried that the stress from my husband might be too much for me. I just wanted someone to listen to my gripes, sorry if I made you worry. Well, I talk to Amy quite often, so I'm okay for now. Oh, and I'll try calling Grandpa tomorrow. Really? You're such a hard worker, Mom. Just don't overdo it, okay? Got it. Thanks for today, good night. You should go to bed early too, Amy. After hearing my daughter's response, "I'm not a child anymore," I chuckled and hung up, then headed to bed myself. The next day, before I could call my parents, they called me first. I had a bad feeling that my father's back was worse than I thought, but it turned out to be something else. When I asked what was up, they wanted to discuss changing their shop's business model to adapt to the times and were interested in starting online sales. However, they were unsure how to begin and called me for advice. That's a pretty good idea. And I think I can help a lot if it's me. Before I got married, I worked for a company that managed online shops. I've learned everything from programming sales systems to designing web pages, and even marketing and advertising strategies. My parents asked me if I could join the company as one of the employees and help out. If my skills can be of use, it would be the ultimate way to show my devotion to them. I gladly accepted the task of setting up the online sales. Once that was decided, there was a mountain of work to get started on immediately. After a long time, I powered up my computer and began working for the first time in years. As I was engrossed in my work, time flew by, and before I knew it, my husband, Roy, came home. "I'm home." "What are you doing?" Oh, welcome back. Actually, I've been put in charge of creating the online sales system by Mom and Dad. It's my first job in a while, so I'm quite happy. I'll start preparing dinner soon. Then Roy made that spiteful face again and spoke. Doing that now, for that tiny company? Every company is doing that nowadays, it's pointless. And even if it sells online, no one is interested in such rural products. Roy sneered at me as I faced the computer. As I was thinking of what to say back, suddenly a voice came from behind. Your parents are still working, huh? Managing a small business must be tough these days. To my surprise, my mother-in-law appeared from behind Roy. Her expression, mocking my parents, was just like Roy's. She probably came with him, but I was so engrossed in my work that I hadn't noticed her at all. What you think is up to you. I'm just going to do what I can. I was quite irritated inside as both Roy and my mother-in-law ridiculed my parents, but since he didn't oppose me working, I just continued. After that, my days were quite busy with both housework and work. Occasionally, I would hear about the current online sales situation from younger generations like my daughter, Amy, and her friends, and incorporate their insights. Of course, I shared this information with my parents, and it also benefited the retail sales at the shop. Time flew by quickly, and a year had passed since I took over the online sales from my parents. The sales page on the internet was finally complete. There were parts one was worried about whether it would work out well. However, contrary to my expectations, the products started selling steadily, and sales continued to rise. The company grew enough to open physical stores in various places. Of course, my parents transferred quite a sum of money as my salary, and I had to try hard not to grin when I checked my bank account. By this time, my conversations with Roy had nearly ceased, and we were practically living separately. When I visited my parents several times for work, I consulted with them about my relationship with Roy and my mother-in-law for the first time. Naturally, my parents were shocked and furious when they learned about it. They then proposed something. They suggested that I consider coming back home and taking over the business. In other words, to divorce Roy and leave New York. I couldn't respond immediately at that moment, so I put my answer on hold. I don't mind divorcing Roy. In fact, there would be no problem even if I did it right now. The only thing I'm concerned about is my daughter living in New York. No matter how much time passes, a child is still a child. It's just something parents worry about. I discussed these feelings with Amy, but as we talked, I realized that I really wanted to work. It seems Amy knew this from the beginning and encouraged me, supporting me wholeheartedly no matter where I go. Once I made up my mind, I gradually began preparing to take over the company. One day, on a holiday, while Roy was washing the car in the yard, his smartphone, which was left on the table, rang. Wondering who it could be, I checked the screen, and there was a name Holly displayed. Holly, that's a woman's name, isn't it? Could it be? Feeling a bad premonition, I checked Roy's smartphone thoroughly. Then, I found numerous pieces of evidence of his affair with this woman named Holly. He was cheating on me. I can't take it anymore. I can't stay in the same house with him anymore. At that moment, I decided to leave the house without waiting for the preparations to be finished. The next day, I woke up early to pack my things for the divorce. There was quite a lot to pack, having lived there for many years, and it was a difficult task, but I couldn't afford to show any weakness. As I was busy packing up, Roy finally woke up and looked at me as if wondering what was going on. What are you doing up so early on a day off? Still rubbing his sleepy eyes, Roy complained. I'm leaving this house today. Thanks for everything until now. I haven't had the divorce papers yet, but I plan to visit a lawyer once things settle down. Roy looked shocked for a moment when he heard my words, but he quickly regained his composure and his expression turned almost joyful. Oh, so you've finally decided to leave. I've been thinking you should disappear soon and wondering when to bring up divorce. I never thought you'd be the one to say it first. This is exactly what I wanted. Without opposing the divorce, Roy accepted my decision with a sneer, as if mocking me. I had thought he might cause trouble by finding some excuse to argue, but contrary to my expectations, things seemed to be progressing smoothly. However, Roy seemed to want to do something mean, as he began to get restless and eventually started kicking my packed bags. "Stop it! I just finished packing those, and now I have to do it all over again." Thinking this might be the last day I see your angry, ugly face makes me a bit sad. But seriously, you haven't finished packing yet? Just get out already. Saying this, Roy kicked my bags again, laughing. He said he wanted me out quickly, but his actions were the complete opposite. I wondered how long he had been this malicious. As I repacked my scattered belongings, my mother-in-law unexpectedly showed up at the house. It seemed Roy had called her. Finally divorcing this eyesore of a daughter-in-law? I'm really glad. I've disliked you since the day you married my son, and I've been at my limit for a long time. My mother-in-law continued to speak spitefully, clearly enjoying herself. She must have rushed over just for this. I just finished packing my bags. I'll be out in 10 minutes. I said this and made a phone call. Exactly 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there were several large trucks and a single black luxury car already parked outside. "Madison, your ride is here. Are you ready to go?" "Yes, thank you for coming all this way. I'll leave the rest to you." "Sure," said the driver, Spencer, before the strong men from the trucks began loading my belongings. From a distance, Roy and his mother watched, open-mouthed and clueless, as my belongings were moved out. "Hey, Madison, what's all this? Why is a luxury car picking you up? And when did you arrange for all these vehicles?" Half in anger and half in shock, Roy demanded an explanation for what was happening. "The company my parents ridiculed has been a huge success. The turning point was probably when we started online sales. Now, we've grown to have several stores not just locally but also in New York, and the profits are incomparable to the old days." As I stated the facts calmly, Roy completely changed his attitude and began to apologize, looking remorseful. "I didn't know you were so successful. I've mocked you for being just a housewife, but if you have money, maybe I should reconsider the divorce. I'm sorry for how I've treated you." Roy said that. Disgusted, I sighed. "What's that? You think I'd accept such a flimsy apology?" Panicked, Roy started to stammer out excuses. "I never really meant to divorce you. It was just tit for tat, like going through a rough patch. You just felt trapped because I didn't oppose the divorce, right? I'm serious. I've been preparing to leave you for a long time. And I know about your affair. I have all the evidence." Hearing my words, Roy turned pale. "Of course, your mother knew about it too but kept it hidden from me, right?" My mother-in-law kept her mouth shut, avoiding eye contact. As their reactions showed, both my mother-in-law and Roy were aware of the affair. "And it seems you've started a new family recently. Good for you." "You knew about that too?" Sweating profusely and shocked, Roy admitted that he had impregnated his mistress. Roy confessed, trying to manage the pregnancy situation, but I had already found out that the mistress intended to be with him. This was revealed through their exchanges on his smartphone, which I checked yesterday. Roy's mistress, Holly, was a married woman. If Holly did not know that her husband was married, I might have blamed him alone, but that doesn't seem to be the case. She was fully aware of the entire situation. I have already informed her husband about the affair through my lawyer. Her husband, extremely upset, has said he will sue not only Holly and my husband. "I didn't hear about this. And there's going to be a child to support. How could I possibly manage this?" As he cried, my husband pleaded with me for mercy. "No matter how much you apologize, I'm not going to forgive what you've done. I forgot to mention that Amy knows about your affair too. She has hired a lawyer and seems to have requested a restraining order against you, her father." "What? Why didn't you stop her? Amy is my daughter. This punishment is too harsh for just an affair, oh." Sobbing, my husband collapsed. Inwardly, I scoffed at him, thinking, "You never cared for her once, what right do you have to speak?" Then, having been silent till now, my mother-in-law spoke up, attempting to throw my husband a lifeline with an outrageous statement. "You hid such a big thing as your work success? If that's the case, I won't allow you to just leave the house like this. If you're leaving, leave all the money as damages for keeping this secret." Although she was furious, it was clear she just regretted losing the money I had. No matter how much she claimed, it didn't change the fact that I was in a favorable position. "Charlotte, thank you for everything until now. Please get along with your new daughter-in-law better than you did with me. Please don't involve me in your life anymore. Goodbye." With that, I quickly got into the luxury car where Spencer was waiting. The divorce would be communicated later through my lawyer. My husband continued to cry and plead as I got into the car, but I ignored him and drove off. When was the last time I felt so clear-headed? I savored this exhilarating feeling as the car swayed on the way back to my parents' house. A few weeks later, the divorce was finalized through my lawyer. I have my savings enough to live on without working for a while. Additionally, there was good news recently. Amazingly, Amy has decided to move jobs and relocate near our family home. I had been unbearably worried about leaving my only daughter in New York, but it seems I wasn't the only one concerned. Amy, too, had been worrying about me as I aged. I found out through my lawyer that Holly had given birth. My ex-husband began living with her and their child at his parents' house, taking responsibility. His mother, stressed by the events, became ill and is now bedridden, requiring constant care. Unable to cope, my ex-husband quit his job to focus on caregiving and raising the child. They are not receiving social welfare and are struggling to get by on his small severance pay. After returning to my parents' home, I continued to work and focused on expanding the business. The effort paid off beautifully, and this year our company was selected for the company award. Thanks to this, the company's reputation soared, we hired more employees, and as the president, I am enjoying a successful daily routine. My name is Michelle. I'm a 32-year-old office worker. I've been married to Tim for 8 years. We were madly in love. We were each other's first loves, started dating in middle school, and got married after dating for 10 years. During that time, there were no significant fights or issues with other women, but when I was 20, I lost my beloved mother. I never had a father, so with my mother gone, I was left without any parents. Having no siblings, I was all alone. Tim was the one who supported me during that time. Back then, I was troubled, and even when Tim spoke kindly to me, I would say cold things like, "You're lucky to have parents." Or when he would go back to his parents' home, I'd say spitefully, "Must be nice to have a family home." But even then, Tim always spoke to me with kindness. I believe that I am who I am today because of Tim. But, somehow after we got married, the kind Tim changed. When we were dating, I never imagined he would turn into a male chauvinist, but now, it's not just that, he becomes uncontrollable when he drinks. We wanted to have children, but with Tim being this way, I thought it would be unfair to the children, so I haven't considered having kids yet. I was hoping he would change someday. I was waiting for that. But people don't change that easily. Instead, it just got worse, and one day he suddenly quit his job. "Michelle! I quit my job. What happened all of a sudden? What's going on?" I couldn't get along with the boss. He was forcing work on me. You work too, so it shouldn't be a problem finding another job, right? It's not a problem, but what do you mean he was forcing work on you? Even though I was already working, he kept piling on more. Have these documents ready by next week. Can you believe that? Normally, you delegate tasks one at a time, right? You're a manager, aren't you? So you understand how ridiculous my boss is, right? I also ask my subordinates to take on tasks, There's no employee who only handles one task. Everyone juggles multiple tasks and completes them in turn. Plus, a deadline for next week is actually quite generous. You're kidding, right? Maybe it's time you realized how much you're disliked at the company. You're the one being unreasonable. It's unfortunate you quit your job, but please hurry up and find a new one. I already have a new job lined up. Really? How did you find something so quickly? A friend of mine runs a company, and he's agreed to hire me. Is that so? When do you start working there? Well, I'll discuss that and get back to you. I was dismayed by Tim's casual attitude, but I felt somewhat relieved knowing he had another job lined up. However, he showed no signs of leaving the house, and every day when I came home from work, he was just lying on the couch playing video games. Hey! Michelle! You're back? Seriously. How can it get this messy in one day? Shut up. Bring me some booze. And after that, it's dinner time. You're at home, so you could make it yourself, right? Aren't you being a bit lazy? And what about finding a new job? When are you going to start working? Hey. What are you saying to a husband who has worked so hard up until now? If you're going to complain, then you should work so much you don't have time to come home. If you have complaints, why don't you do something about your low income? Fine, I'll bring the drinks. I was too tired to argue back, so I just ignored Tim's remarks. After all, he used to be so kind. Maybe he'll become kind again. I believed that and endured. But it wasn't a simple issue. From that day on, Tim would be at home every day, constantly complaining. Not only was he not working, but his drinking habits were getting worse, and when he lost at games, he would get so frustrated that he sometimes threw and broke dishes. I was really glad we didn't have kids. That's all I could think about. When will he ever change? A month later. Tim hasn't changed at all. There's no booze. And hey, when the husband is drinking, you're supposed to bring some snacks, right? There's some cheese and crackers over there, isn't there? Those are just snacks. You're supposed to make something. We just had dinner not long ago. You've gained quite a bit of weight since you quit your job. Maybe you should cut back on the food? Shut up. Don't you order me around. I married you, who has no parents. You should be grateful. When he said that, I was left speechless. And feeling so frustrated, I always cried in the bath. The Tim who used to speak to me so kindly is no longer there. Now, the Tim before me is just the worst kind of man. Yet, even though I realized this, I pretended not to see it. Because I couldn't replace the gratitude I had for the past. 6 months have passed since Tim quit his job. About 4 months into that period, he started to increasingly demand money from me. Until then, he must have been managing with the savings from his own salary, but that must have run out. Even so, he doesn't work, but as long as I can manage, I'll give him money. Because he's the person who saved me. That's what I believed as I worked hard. However, the amount he asked for kept increasing day by day. Hey! Give me $2,000. $2,000? What do you need it for? Why do I have to tell you that? Isn't it strange not to say what such a large amount of money is for? Just the other day, you said it was for gaming, and I gave you $400, right? How much do you think I've given you just this month? About $6,000 or so? Are you telling me you earn so little that you can't give $6,000 a month to your husband? It's absurd to give $6,000 a month. I'm not a millionaire. Before you blame others, you should blame your low income. I'm protecting the home right now, so go work more. Hey, then you should work. Were you even listening? You should blame yourself before blaming others. Maybe I should go to my mistress. I can earn with my youth, after all. What? What did you just say? Nothing. But anyway, you need to work. Even after being told all this, I still didn't feel suspicious of Tim. Until now, Tim had indeed worked hard. So now it's my turn to work hard. That's what I thought. And I clearly heard the words Tim said. I definitely heard him say he might go to his mistress. But even if Tim ends up cheating, I suppose it can't be helped. Maybe it was some kind of brainwashing, because I couldn't satisfy Tim. I felt that everything Tim said was right and always listened to him. Because of that, after working full-time, I also took a part-time job as a station cleaner. Since my company had said that side jobs required consultation, I had properly discussed it with my boss and obtained permission for the side job. However, after months of living like this, my health began to deteriorate and I couldn't put my heart into my work at the company. Despite urging Tim repeatedly to get a job, each time I was just yelled at and told he had picked me up. Then I thought I should stop consulting him about it. I figured I just needed to work hard until he decided to work. That's what I thought. But one day, I was called by my boss. "You don't seem to be focusing on your work lately, are you okay?" "I'm sorry. Juggling jobs has been tough. Why is a manager like you even doing side jobs? You have a husband, after all. If you can't focus on your work here, I might have to ask you to step down from the managerial position, and I can't approve of your side job either." Faced with that, I panicked and explained the situation at home. My boss was outraged. Letting a woman work while he sits at home. If you allow that, I suppose that's one thing, but I understand there are problems in every family. However, your lack of engagement at work. To let your husband stay at home, are you really in love with a man who wants that? Yes, he supported me when times were tough. I can't complain about family matters, you're free to do as you like there, but it's different with work. If you can't focus, of course, I'll have to demote you from the manager position. Side jobs will be prohibited too. I'm expecting a lot from you in the future. I made you a manager because I have those expectations, after all. It's incredible to be a manager at your age. I understand. I'm very pleased and motivated by the company's expectations, but I also know that I'm currently not meeting them, and that's frustrating. I will consult with my husband to urge him to find work. I understand that once trust is lost with the company, it's hard to regain it. That's right. I'll support you as much as I can, so keep up the good work. I was fortunate to work at a good company. That was my only salvation. However, when I got home, the room was dirty. Every single day, the room was just filthy. Cup noodles left uneaten and candy wrappers scattered around the sofa. And on top of that, cans of alcohol strewn about, with Tim never bothering to clean them up. He just slept on the sofa. I couldn't understand how he could sleep so much without doing anything. It was puzzling. Since waking him would only result in complaints, I cooked while he was asleep and waited for him to wake up. I finished cooking without waking him, and then cleaned the dirty room. Then Tim, woken by a slight noise, said grumpily, "Hey! Keep it down, I'm trying to sleep here." "You're up. Good morning." "It's not a good morning. I said it's noisy." "Sorry." If saying sorry was enough to be forgiven, life would be easy. You really are the most inconsiderate woman. After saying that, Tim got up from the sofa, went to the living room, and upon seeing the meal laid out, he said something outrageous. "Is this all you can make? I've been waiting, and you come home late. What kind of wife are you?" "That's because I have multiple jobs." "That's no excuse. Can't even balance housework and a job, what kind of woman are you? If you're going to say that, could you start working soon? I've been told at work that they might demote me from my managerial position, and without the extra allowance, my salary might decrease." "Then just get another job." "Why does it come to that? Why won't you work? Why do I have to work? You're working, that should be enough. So, I don't need to give you an allowance anymore? That way, I won't have to juggle jobs, and I can focus on my work at the company. If you're not working, you don't need an allowance, right?" "What did you just say?" "Because it's true. Always playing games and never working. Why do I have to earn money for your allowance as well?" "Is this a tantrum because you can't balance housework and your job?" I took in someone like you, an orphan, and this is how you think? How dare you? After saying that, Tim threw the game controller at me. I was so done. I had reached my limit. I just said sorry, ate my dinner with trembling hands, took a bath, and went to bed. Tim has been sleeping on the sofa ever since he quit his job. So, we sleep separately. I was able to sleep soundly. But the next day, perhaps due to considerable mental strain, my health had deteriorated. What are you lazing around for instead of going to work? I'm not going to work today because I'm feeling ill. If you're going to stay home, then you should respond to everything I say, right? You can do that much since you're home, right? When I give an order, you should move accordingly. That's impossible, I have a fever and a headache. I don't care. That's your fault for not managing yourself properly. Tim's voice echoed in my reeling head. I was truly at my limit. I thought he would at least be somewhat considerate if I said something. But that idea was completely wrong. Hey, Michelle. Get me a drink. Hey, Michelle. Clean up the spilled booze here. Hey, Michelle. What about lunch? Make it quick. You have 5 minutes. I was ordered around relentlessly, with no time to rest. I should have gone to work. It would have been easier. In the end, being bossed around by Tim all day made my condition worse. Tim never said a kind word. What was that period before we got married? It seemed like a dream. Why has it turned out like this? I thought I would be happy. But maybe that was a mistake. Perhaps Tim had been so kind originally just to make me obedient, and thinking that makes it hard to trust people anymore. Anyway, I had become afraid of Tim and everyone else. I was dreaming. When I realized that, the dream suddenly shattered. It was as if I had been under a spell. Then, I began to think only about divorce. If my husband was really having an affair, I would consider it a stroke of luck. I thought I could divorce him quickly if I found some evidence. I hadn't recovered my health, but I had to go to work. I actually wanted to go to work. There was no rest to be had at home. And without telling my husband, I quit the other jobs I had been juggling. My physical limits were one thing, but it felt ridiculous to keep earning money for Tim's sake. Once I focused solely on my job, my boss started praising me. It seems you've finally settled down. Yes, I've cleared my mind. I apologize for my behavior until now. That's all right. You've worked hard. I'm going to assign you a task. You can decide whether to accept it or not, and I'll wait for your decision. Just let me know once you've made up your mind. Thank you very much. I really am fortunate to work for such a great company. I'm thankful. But when I return home from this blessed company, Tim continues to live the same unchanged life. If you're back, start cooking right away. Did you know? Mrs. Kirkland in the neighborhood says she starts cooking from the morning. Is that so? What's with that attitude? Because you're all talk. Just nagging and nagging endlessly. What are you saying? I'm just saying what I think. You're wrong if you think I'll stay silent forever. Always tumbling on the sofa, spending your days in a mess, satisfied with just taking money? Don't be ridiculous. Life isn't that sweet. You should be grateful I took you in, an orphan. How long are you going to keep saying that? I was grateful at that time, yes. But on further thought, just because there's gratitude, doesn't mean your tyranny should be tolerated. I've pampered you too much. That was my mistake. But I've reached my limit. Is that so? Then I don't need you anymore. You'll really have no family then. That's fine. If that's the kind of family you are, I don't need it. I've got the divorce papers. Can you sign them now? Of course. I have a mistress anyway. I don't need a woman who just brings in a fixed income. Is that so? Well, goodbye then. After saying that, I packed my bags and left the house. I submitted the divorce papers to the city office the next day. I had actually already signed a lease on an apartment, and I moved my belongings there. If Tim stops siphoning money from me, I can live quite comfortably on my own. I was excited. I still received many insulting messages from Tim. "You're heartless for someone I took in, an orphan. You're just a coward who ran away because you couldn't balance work and household chores." But I ignored them. I couldn't bother with him anymore. Then, I started gathering evidence of Tim's infidelity. Tim had mentioned the word mistress several times, so he might have really been cheating. If that's the case, it's convenient for me, and since I've given him money all this time, I need to get it back in the form of alimony. I hired a lawyer and a detective to investigate Tim. It turned out that Tim was indeed having an affair with a date club hostess. I went to the club myself to ask her how long their relationship had been going on. "Hello. I'm Tim's ex-wife." "Tim's? Really?" "Yes. We're divorced now, but it seems you were involved with him." "I didn't know he had a wife." "Well, that's what mistresses often say, isn't it? Don't think you can just get away with it by saying that." "No. I really didn't know." The woman's name was Marie. But she was more honest than I expected, quickly giving me her name, address, and the phone number. She was eager to cooperate fully. Apparently, Tim frequented a daytime dating club, and after several outings, they ended up in a romantic relationship. It seems Tim had borrowed money from Marie, the hostess. Moreover, he had told her, "My mother is sick and needs hospital fees. I want to give her advanced medical treatments, which are quite expensive. Even dipping into my savings, it's tough." His actions were like those of a con artist. Marie told me various things, including the fact that they never spent a night together. Maybe it's because he thought I might find out. There's a hefty tab at the hostess club. He was trying to get Marie to pay it all. The more I hear, the more of a scumbag he seems. I took Marie to the lawyer's office and submitted evidence of the affair. They said it was enough to claim damages. Furthermore, Marie decided to sue Tim for fraud. Tim, who received a registered letter from both of us, hurriedly contacted me. "What's going on? What is this? Can't you even read? Everything you need to know is right there. Why do I have to pay such a large sum? I took care of you, the parentless you. Wasn't the cost of taking you in around $200,000? In that case, shouldn't you be paying me alimony instead? Are you really okay? You didn't even adopt me, just married me, right? So what's with the cost of taking me in? You didn't have money for the wedding, and your parents were drowning in debt from slot machine, horse racing, and gambling. That's why there was no money for the wedding, right? Ultimately, I paid for it. I've been supporting our recent lifestyle, so who's really in trouble after the divorce? It's you, isn't it? It's truly exasperating." "You, huh? And how do you know about Marie?" "It was easy to find out once I started looking. You used my money on Marie, didn't you? You thought you wouldn't have to ask me for money by the time we got divorced, so you were hitting up Marie instead. It's only natural to want to be with a younger, cuter, higher-earning girl like Marie rather than a low-income woman like you, right? But you got in the way. It's fine for you to be obsessed with me, but don't bother Marie." That's my line. You committed fraudulent acts against Marie. That's why she's suing you. Huh? Is that so? What did you think? Marie thought we were engaged, so when she found out about you, she broke off the engagement. Are you living in a dream world? Remember when you begged for money, saying your mother was hospitalized? You even asked for $100,000. Your mother isn't even that sick. She's perfectly fine, chatting up the staff at the bakery as usual. And yet, you pulled off such a scam, which is why you got sued. Marie has absolutely no intention of marrying you. That's impossible. She was crazy about me the whole time. That's probably because she didn't know we were married, right? She told me. She wasn't from a privileged family like yours, so she was drawn to scumbags like you, just like me. You took advantage of her situation, didn't you? That's not true. Well, I don't care, just make sure you pay Marie and me our alimony, okay? Of course I can't, can I? All I do is play games. You don't have to talk so big, do you? You should work and pay back the money. It's your duty. It was wrong of me to take a smartass like you as a wife. Well, it doesn't matter. Just remember one thing. What's that? Our mother and father owe me a lot of money. They can't borrow from banks or consumer finance companies anymore, so they came to me for help. Your parents always said to me, since we're taking in you, who has no parents. I was fooled by those words and gave them money, but I realize now I was stupid. I sent a registered letter to them to get that debt back. They'll probably turn to you for help next, right? I don't think you'll be able to get away without working anymore. What's up with that? Why didn't you tell me something so important? Well, I've been able to put up with it until now. But you've been having affairs and continuing with your arrogant attitude without working. Even I have my limits. Don't mess with me. You're making a fool out of me. Who's the one making a fool out of who? Always going on about not having parents. Well, some people with parents still turn out wrong, so having parents isn't everything, you know? What's with that attitude? Don't mess with me. Is it over now? I can't deal with you anymore. Pay the damages. Don't rely on Marie either. That's the only promise I'm asking for. Goodbye. After ending the call, I quickly contacted Marie, letting her know that there might be contact coming her way. And a few days later, it seems that contact actually reached Marie. Hey. Listen to this, Michelle. Guess what message I got from Tim? He said, I'm willing to marry you. Can we? Like, why the high and mighty attitude? Apparently, he wants to get married to stop the damages claim. I talked to him about your damages claim, but he really doesn't have any money. I'm kind of disappointed. After all, I'm a hostess, you know? I can't feel valued without someone with money. But you were really in love with Tim, weren't you? Are you okay? Of course. Anyone who cheats with a wife around is scum. Besides, there are many women out there who have affairs thinking they won't get caught by the wife. But I really can't forgive that. You're really straightforward. Sometimes it's not easy to live like that, so don't lose heart no matter what happens. Keep moving forward in your own way. Thank you. It's comforting to hear that from someone 12 years older. Well, to you, I'm just an old lady. We laughed and joked around. Honestly, when I got the message from Tim, I thought I might be pretty crushed because I liked him quite a bit, but she turned out to be a surprisingly strong and wonderful woman. Honestly, Tim doesn't have the great looks that make you fall in love anymore. He spends the whole day lazing around. His skin is rough from neglect. And he's broke. He even had to borrow money from Marie. Yet, falling in love with him again is probably just another one of his brainwashing tactics. Both Marie and I are better off without him. I truly believe that from the bottom of my heart. And then, after that, Tim apparently showed up at my company. But I'm no longer there. What my boss had told me at that time was about a transfer overseas. I agreed to go overseas, now that I'm divorced from Tim, and start fresh. And just as I was going abroad, Tim showed up at my company. As expected, the police were called and he was taken away. He was released on bail the same day. Hey, Michelle. Where are you right now? Me? I'm in Malaysia, why? Malaysia? Why are you there? I've been transferred overseas for work. I figured you might try to contact me or show up at the company, so I moved to Malaysia. I wanted to live a life completely unrelated to you. The people here are very kind. There's not a single jerk here who would say, I'll be with you even though you don't have parents. I was just telling you the truth, wasn't I? Be grateful. Anyway, I'm asking for a reduction in the damages. I can't pay. That girl Marie blocked me and quit hostessing. I can't even talk to her if I wanted to. That's unfortunate. But you didn't just want to talk, did you? You wanted to be taken care of, didn't you? You approached me with kindness like me, but then treated me casually and hurt me as soon as you got what you wanted. I pray that there won't be another victim like me. You should just get a job in the first place. If I could, I'd already have a job, wouldn't I? Take responsibility for spoiling me. He said that, but I just ignored him. I ended the call and blocked his number. Then I decided to consolidate all the damages I had received from Tim so far, which had been varying monthly, and request them all at once through my lawyer. Of course, Tim couldn't afford to pay, and he was caught with another hostess, doing similar things to what he did with Marie, and was arrested for fraud. That news reached Malaysia, so it must have been quite shocking in Japan. Tim and his parents fell together. As a result, they ended up with a criminal record and some debts. What they do from now on is none of my concern, but it's certain they won't find happiness. Freed from the brainwashing I'd been under, I plan to thoroughly enjoy my life in Malaysia. Why would someone like you, who isn't even related by blood, come to the wedding? I've only invited family. Strangers need to leave right now. Mike's daughter-in-law approached me with a harsh tone. I was taken aback and fell, digging my nails into the rough carpet as I clenched my fist. I'm truly sorry. I whispered in my heart to my son and slowly stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for showing you such an unsightly scene. With that, I said towards the tablet in front of me. Huh? What are you doing? What's going on? She must have been surprised by my actions. What in the world is happening? Why? What is all this? The daughter-in-law screamed in panic, but it wasn't over yet. As her true nature was revealed one after another, everyone at the venue was left speechless. My name is Kelly. I joined a regular company and worked as an office worker, just an ordinary working woman. I met my husband at the company, and we married young, leading a normal married life. However, those peaceful days did not last, and I was widowed a few years ago. Since then, I've been engrossed in work, filling the void, contemplating how to spend my days as a widow. One day, I met Mike, a salesperson from one of our business partners. Fate is a strange thing, and as we got to know each other, I learned that he had divorced his wife a few years ago. Moreover, he had a son, John, from his previous marriage. Following the divorce, he moved here, where his parents' hometown was. Despite the challenges, Mike raised John on his own and supported the family, which I truly admired. As we shared our past experiences, we were drawn to each other and started dating. When I visited Mike's home and met John, I greeted him, "Nice to meet you, John." "I'm Kelly." "Pleased to meet you." "Ah, nice to meet you too." "I'm John." "Thank you." At first, he was shy, but gradually he began to talk more. When our remarriage was decided, Mike told him, "Kelly is going to be your mom now," and he nodded with a big smile. Mike's parents were a very positive person, providing a much-needed connection for me, who had been rushing through life. I'm enjoying peaceful times with John now, but I worry that as he grows older, he might reject me because I'm not his real mother. Even though we're not related by blood, I've vowed to raise John as a fine son. Time has passed, and John has grown up well. He went to a prestigious law school, moved out to live on his own, and even made some friends in the university drama club. He seems to be thriving. Now that parenting has reached a milestone, Mike and I talk about how the house feels empty without John. Whether he knows it or not, John always comes home for the holidays. He eventually got a job at a major company not far from home. John is personable and smart, so his boss has high expectations for him, and he's advancing as a businessperson. He's been recognized within the company and even mentioned as a candidate for future leadership. Honestly, as a parent, it's heartwarming to hear such good news about my son, and I feel relieved that he's grown up so well. But truly, John himself is the one who has put in the effort, and I hope many good things come his way in life. One day, John tells me he has a fiancée. There's someone I want to marry. Well, that's wonderful. Bring her over soon. I was surprised, but seeing a bashful John made me feel happy. Later, John brought home a refined-looking beautiful woman, appearing a few years younger than him. Nice to meet you. I'm dating John. My name is Anastasia. She greeted us at the entrance, and I hurriedly returned the greeting. I'm Kelly, John's mother. Please come in. Thank you. She smiled gracefully, though she seemed a bit distant, probably just nervous, so I welcomed her. As we chatted about trivial things, my husband commented on Anastasia's good manners. You found a good girl. John blushed and smiled, and as I brewed tea, I felt a bit jittery thinking, John's getting married too. At that moment, she asked, may I use your restroom? I showed her where it was, but she took a bit long to return, making me worry she might be feeling unwell, so I went to check on her. She wasn't in the bathroom, but was looking around the house. It's not a big house, so she couldn't have gotten lost. What's wrong? I asked, and she jumped slightly, turning to me with wide eyes. I'm sorry. I was just curious about what kind of life John has been living. Oh, I'd love to see some pictures from when he was little. The album. I barely have any photos of John from before we got married. Before you got married? Anastasia asked, raising an eyebrow. I explained that John and I are not related by blood, which surprised her. So, John's impressive DNA comes from his previous mom, huh? What? She said this with a smile, leaving me momentarily unsure of what had just been said. While I was still trying to process this, Anastasia swiftly returned to the living room where John and others were. As the marriage talks progressed, I had my concerns, but we blessed John. We were soon set to meet with Anastasia's family, the Smith family. They chose a private room in a fancy restaurant, and her strict-looking parents showed up. Mike and I felt a bit intimidated, but John, always good with people, remained unfazed. However, as we discussed the wedding, the Smith parents quickly took control of the conversation. For a woman, her wedding day is a once-in-a-lifetime event. We want our daughter to have a glamorous wedding. Yes, but... Therefore, we will handle all the wedding planning. I tried to interject, but they dismissed any attempts to have a say. Furthermore, there's a salary difference between John and our Anastasia. You'll likely have more guests, right? Therefore, we would like you to cover 80% of the wedding costs. 80%. It seemed absurd that they would decide everything about the plan, yet we were supposed to bear 80% of the costs. Mike and I protested, but Smith's father quickly countered with a firm tone. We are giving away our precious only daughter. Your son should have the capacity to handle that. We also have our precious only son. I began to reply, but John cut me off with, Mom, just keep quiet. I'll handle the money myself. So don't worry, and he smiled at me. But my real concern wasn't just the money, it was how they were acting as though they were doing us a favor by marrying their daughter into our family. Furthermore, Anastasia, his daughter, didn't try to stop the discussion and was nonchalantly picking at her food. If they don't see us as equals, John might feel uncomfortable after they're married. As I was about to speak, the Smith matriarch interrupted again. Well, I've heard your son is quite the elite at a major corporation. In contrast, Anastasia is just a humble office worker. It's also to maintain your son's reputation. I wasn't fully convinced and simply said, I'll think about it. Then, showing their dissatisfaction, they brought up their family rule. In the Smith family, the legal marriage registration happens after the wedding ceremony. This is in case we can't pay for the wedding, or if any issues arise with your son, we can call off the engagement. So, you regard the wedding as such a crucial event? None of their statements were satisfactory to me, and my husband also looked troubled. However, John didn't seem to mind, and the conversation proceeded smoothly. We left the wedding arrangements to John, and the meeting between both families was adjourned. There was a sense of unease, but it seemed strictly a family issue, and I thought they must trust Anastasia herself. On a certain day as the wedding approached, we had invited Anastasia over as usual when she excused herself to use the restroom. Mike and John were busy discussing the wedding details and were very focused. Then, from somewhere distant, I heard the sound of a camera shutter. After a while, I heard it again. Curious, I followed Anastasia. There she was, pulling things out all over the house, leaving a mess, and taking photos with her phone. Anastasia, what are you doing? Oh, just a moment. As I asked incredulously, she turned around and glared at me as if to say, you saw, didn't you? Not understanding why she was photographing our belongings, I asked again what she was doing, and she clicked her tongue and approached me. Then she whispered in my ear. Done shooting. Now, can you clean up everything here? What? Mom, it looks pretty bad to leave it all messy like this. Her nonsensical comment left me dumbfounded, but she continued. Nothing you saw here happened. I was just here, not doing anything, right? I was completely baffled and stood frozen for a moment. Anastasia, I can't follow you. What are you trying to do, rummaging through someone else's house? Tell me what you intended. This is so annoying. Who cares anymore? When I confronted her, Anastasia clicked her tongue and retorted. Oh, by the way, your designer bag sold for $600 yesterday. You really have some nice stuff. What? Do you know what a flea market is? It's a pity to have these things just rotting away in this house, so I put them up for sale. You weren't using them anyway, right? You should be thanking me, it's less clutter for you. Realizing what she meant, it dawned on me. She had been rummaging through our valuables, taking photos, and selling them off without permission. Well, too bad it's come to this. You're going to regret this, just so you're prepared. With that, she walked back to the living room. I felt like I had witnessed something unbelievable, but after tidying up the mess Anastasia had made, I took a moment to breathe and returned to the living room. There, Anastasia was sobbing. Unable to understand the situation, John, looking unusually stern, spoke to me. Mom, stop picking on Anastasia behind her back. What? She says you follow her every time she goes to the bathroom and you've been saying harsh things to her. She's crying about it. I understand you're upset as a mother-in-law, but making her cry isn't right, is it? I see. So this is what she meant by regretting it later. She's trying to turn John and Mike against me to isolate me. She pretended to go to the bathroom, but was actually selling things from the house. You can see it yourself if you check her phone. Anastasia seemed a bit startled, quickly put away her phone, and started spouting lies in a soothing voice. I would never do such a thing. It's all in your imagination, Mom. Then show us the photo album on your phone right now. Why would you doubt me to this extent? As Anastasia and I argued, John shouted. Stop it, both of you. The wedding is almost here, don't fight. I was taken aback and fell silent. I shouldn't have confronted his future wife in front of John, especially not when he's already stressed about the wedding. I should have stayed calm instead of getting carried away. I quietly apologized to John, and even to Anastasia for going too far. Anastasia seized the moment to say, all the nagging and nitpicking have been hard on me, effortlessly lying again, probably because she dislikes me. Later, I subtly inquired about Anastasia to John, but it seems she plays the part of a good woman in front of him. When alone with me, Anastasia still behaves poorly, like putting her feet up on the table or making snide remarks like, what's it like not being related to your son? At an opportune moment, I voiced my concerns to John. Is she really okay? Something's definitely off. Maybe you should be careful. The young folks these days are like that. Don't worry about it too much, he replied. Mike didn't seem concerned either. Perhaps my words as a future mother-in-law were too much pressure for her. Am I to blame? I pondered while enduring Anastasia's harassment as time mercilessly ticked by. Then came the wedding day. After a hectic preparation the day before, I arrived at the venue feeling somewhat unreal. Even though I'm not well-versed in weddings, I realized from talking to the staff that this was clearly an expensive plan. I hope John isn't pushing himself too hard. That's all that filled my mind. During the ceremony, Mike kept tearing up at John's dignified appearance, but somehow I couldn't bring myself to cry. Is it because we're not related by blood? Thoughts I had never imagined in my life crossed my mind. Maybe it's because Anastasia has been so sarcastic towards me. It's silly to think so negatively. With these unsettling feelings, the reception began. I had already greeted friends from both the groom's and the bride's sides who were managing the reception. John mentioned that not only colleagues and old friends, but also important clients and influential figures were attending, and the reception staff seemed nervous. After completing all the formalities, I was told to collect the wedding gifts from the groom's reception. Thank you for handling the reception. I'm here to collect the wedding gifts. They looked troubled and said, the bride's side receptionists have taken all the bags of gifts to the bride. Does that include the gifts from the groom's side? I asked, and yes, they said. Despite being a relative supposed to collect them, I didn't blame the two receptionists and quickly returned to the venue. The reception proceeded glamorously, and it was time for Anastasia's outfit change. Then, seizing the moment, John approached me. Mom, there's a surprise planned for Anastasia where she'll be given a bouquet. I was supposed to do it, but could you do it instead? A surprise? Where? Anastasia will stop by the dressing room after changing. I want you to go to the dressing room and give her the bouquet. Why me? Of all people to give her a surprise, it makes no sense for it to be me. She probably wouldn't be pleased to receive the bouquet from me. Then John gave a faint smile. Mom, I was hoping you and Anastasia could settle things here since there seems to have been a lot between you. Settle things. Is it about the issues with Anastasia? Or did he notice my discontent? Either way, he probably wants us to put the past behind us and, even if not friendly, return to a cordial relationship. Understanding John's feelings, I agreed to take on the role of delivering the surprise bouquet. I rehearsed the steps in my mind as I walked to the dressing room. Knock, knock, knock. I knocked on the door, slowly opened it, and saw Anastasia with her back turned. Who is it? It's John's mother, Kelly. As instructed by John, I addressed her while completing the steps. But Anastasia just said, "Oh, it's you," and continued rummaging through something, not even bothering to turn around. Just as I was about to hand her the bouquet with a smile, she exclaimed. Seriously, this is just not enough. What? This guy's name is Travis. John mentioned he's some president, but look, there's hardly luxury things in here. Seriously, everyone's contributions are so stingy. I didn't expect much from my side, but they should at least give more. She was shouting this while opening the wedding gifts I had just collected. She was checking every wedding gifts. How rude! Stop that right now. I couldn't help but raise my voice. As I reached out to stop her, Anastasia turned sharply and snapped, "Don't touch me," as she pushed me away. Caught off balance by an unexpected force, I stumbled in my unfamiliar heel and fell to the ground. The beautiful bouquet hit the floor, and the luggage at my feet clattered and scattered. Anastasia, slightly panicked, turned towards me clutching the wedding gift. Her expression was unbecoming of her glamorous dress, more like that of a demon. Ouch! What have you done? Quiet down. Why is someone like you, who isn't even related to John by blood, at this wedding? I only invited family. Strangers need to leave right now. Don't boss me around. Anastasia confronted me with a fierce tone. I dug my nails into the rough carpet as I clenched my fist. I'm truly sorry, John. I whispered to myself and slowly stood up. Dusting off the dress, I turned my back on Anastasia. She must have been surprised by my actions. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for showing such an unsightly scene. I said this towards the tablet in front of me. Huh? What are you doing? What's going on? Confused, she approached the tablet, which gradually lit up. Displayed on the screen were her own face and the murmuring crowd at the venue. What is this? Actually, the surprise John mentioned was to broadcast the scene of me giving Anastasia the bouquet in the dressing room on the venue's screen. The venue staff had set up a video call on the tablet, and after the bouquet surprise, the plan was to return to the venue while broadcasting the bride who had just finished changing. I had entered the dressing room and turned on the video call to the venue right away. So, the screen showed not only her rummaging through the wedding gifts but also her earlier outburst and the moment she pushed me down. You're kidding, right? I didn't hear about this. Surprises are supposed to be unexpected, right? Finally, your true colors are revealed. Don't joke with me. Why didn't the venue staff stop this? This must be some kind of accident. Someone stop this now. Who could have imagined a bride rummaging through wedding gifts, hurling abuse, and resorting to violence when stopped? You've disgraced yourself on your big day, learn some shame. I retorted sharply, and Anastasia grimaced and clenched her teeth. Then, as if she had thought of something clever, she said, "Ladies and gentlemen at the venue, all of this was just an act. Sorry for the shock. How about we toast with a revelation about the groom instead?" And she continued, smirking. I'm the one with the information here. If there are influential guests at the venue, it's perfect. I'll drag John down to hell with me. Anastasia takes drastic actions, taking advantage of the presence of prominent people among my son's guests. However, contrary to Anastasia's plans, the crowd at the venue begins to stand up and leave, their departure displayed on screen. What? Why? Listen to John's exposé. Record it and spread it around, mess up John's reputation and social standing. Didn't you tell everyone who's not family to leave? Most of the people here are practically strangers to you. Fine then. As long as I get the something of value, it's okay. Your son embarrassed himself in front of important people, miserable. But they're strangers, so it doesn't matter. Anastasia laughs loudly. Just then, the door burst open. John entered. Seeing John, Anastasia was visibly shaken. Perhaps confronting the man she had just vowed love to made the contradiction even more terrifying. But strangely, I felt calm. There was no sign of panic on John's face. Were you deceiving me? John asked her in a calm tone, staring straight at Anastasia. Yes, but I'm not hurt by it. I've got an excuse to break off our marriage registration, and I've taken plenty of money. And take everything I can from you because of embarrassing me. Saying this, she clutched a pile of the wedding gifts. Directing the receptionists to carry them was probably part of her plan. Yet John did not show any signs of panic, just looking at Anastasia with pity. This seemed to annoy her even more, and she taunted further. Ah, bringing down an elite feels really good. I just need to cut ties with my relatives, change my job and friends. But you'll have a hard time. Showing such a terrible wedding to important people, you'll have to go around apologizing to bosses and influential guests. Probably gonna lose your job, right? As I was about to retort, John finally spoke up. So, they were really just your family, friends, and colleagues, huh? What? What do you mean? I inadvertently asked John. Around apologizing? There's no need. Because the people at the venue were really just strangers after all. What? Like a switch had been flipped, John's demeanor changed. I knew you were up to something. You kept insisting on inviting wealthy guests, constantly asking me to invite them. The guests who came today are friends from my college days and former members of the drama club, now working as actors. Not only Anastasia but I too was taken aback. They varied in appearance, demeanor, and age, but those who seemed like voters or CEOs were all extras. John had asked them to act the part, telling Anastasia that they were influential people. In other words, the guests on the groom's side were fakes John had prepared in advance. "You tricked me!" Anastasia, her face red with rage, was indignant. "An eye for an eye, a lie for a lie. Mom is family connected by the heart. But I couldn't let your antics trouble my bosses or mentors." The mention of family connected by the heart nearly overwhelmed me with emotion. Deep down, John had always believed in me. This whole scenario was discussed with the venue staff as a possibility. The earlier footage was recorded, and the police have already been called. "You talked about dragging me to hell, but you're the only one going down, you marriage scammer." As John moved to restrain Anastasia, she made a last-ditch effort by throwing the bouquet on the floor at his face. Then, clutching the bag full of everyone's wedding gifts, she attempted to flee. I grabbed her arm firmly, even as I stumbled. "Let go of me!" "No, I will not let go. This time for real, we're strangers." I endured because I thought we were going to be family. "But I'm not your mother-in-law, and you're not my daughter. I won't let you escape this time." While it turned into a bit of a scuffle, I stood my ground against her. Then, several venue staff rushed to the scene and restrained her. Minutes later, the police arrived and took Anastasia into custody, and the bride's side of the guests at the venue was in turmoil. The Smith family, Anastasia's relatives, were obviously shocked, and the colleagues and friends invited were horrified by her outrageous behavior displayed on the screen. It's unclear how much John had planned, but the guests on the groom's side and the venue staff were relatively composed. After a hectic time and the subsequent dispersal, I asked John for details. He then said, "Anastasia claimed you did various things to her, but I just couldn't believe it." Reflecting on my words about whether Anastasia was okay, he thought hard and investigated her background in the limited time he had. Soon, dubious information came pouring in, and he hastily arranged everything. The wedding went ahead not just because we needed evidence for her arrest, but also because I wanted to believe in her a little longer. John said with a distant, somewhat sad look, "Mom, I'm sorry for putting you through this tough role. I really am a disgrace as a son." John apologized to me. "That's not true at all. It must have been hard to doubt someone, right? Thank you for believing in me." I patted the top of John's head, and he shyly smiled with tears in his eyes. Later, it was discovered during the investigation that Anastasia had a prior record of fraud. She won't be getting out of jail anytime soon. Since the bride's side guests were genuine, she was disowned by a few close friends and relatives, and naturally, she lost her job. Various minor misdeeds also came to light, adding up to claims against her amounting to millions of dollars, including the damages we suffered. Even my husband, who likely knew nothing about this, apologized to me for his past frivolousness. Several weeks after I thought everything had been resolved, our landline rang, and the caller introduced herself with a heavy voice. "This is Mrs. Smith." It was Anastasia's mother, whom I hadn't seen since the wedding where her daughter was arrested. She must have been having a tough time too. The bravado she had shown at our previous meeting was gone. "I have something I need to discuss," she repeated in a barely audible voice. It seemed urgent, so I agreed to meet her at a specified location. The room we were guided to was private. Sitting down, I asked what was wrong, and Anastasia's mother began to cry. "I'm truly sorry for what my daughter has done. She has brought shame to our family," she apologized. Then she took out a handkerchief, started wiping her eyes, and continued. "Actually, my daughter had chosen a very expensive plan for the venue, and the cost is this much." She politely took out a calculator, started punching in numbers, and showed me an exorbitantly high amount. "What?" "No, I mean, despite the trouble we've caused, as per our initial agreement, you'll pay 80% of this amount," she stated, recalculating on her calculator to show me the amount. Crying while calculating, how skilled she was. Our family is currently covering it. Ideally, we'd like the first payment within 2 weeks in full, but if you can make it tomorrow, we can do it in 3 payments. Dates, number of payments, our family's situation, and specific amounts. If you can't remember, you might want to take notes, she said, her demeanor not matching someone who had wronged us. I sighed deeply and pulled a document out of my bag. Can you see this? This is the official bill issued by the venue. I laid the document over her calculator, tapping on the amount to emphasize it. Anastasia's mother was taken aback, as if wondering why I had that. Yes, what I showed her was the official cost for the ceremony provided by the venue. It was a precaution I had taken, and of course, it wasn't cheap. Considering all the extravagant plans Anastasia had chosen. But the amount you're asking me to pay, the figures are off, aren't they? I flipped the document and pointed accusingly at the calculator. This was clearly an intentional overcharge. That is, you'll pay the full amount. Of course, only the fair price. I had heard from the venue staff that the bill was supposed to go to the Smith family, the contract holders. They probably tried to manipulate the amount to prevent my family from seeing the documents. And, something that has been bothering me, haven't you been part of your daughter's scams, taking your share? Trying to postpone the registration to quickly break off the engagement after swindling the money, right? Your daughter is quite the actress, playing the victim so well. Now it all makes sense. The odd feeling I had since the first meeting was because this family, the Smith, had been trying to deceive us together. Even with her daughter caught, this shamelessness. Perhaps Anastasia was also being used by her own parents. Putting your daughter out in front while you take all the benefits, that's despicable. As I said this, the tears quickly receded from her eyes, and she started gathering her belongings. Then, without saying another word, she stood up and tried to run away. I grabbed her arm. So, mother and daughter make their escapes the same way, huh? I gripped Anastasia's arm even tighter than before and pulled her back. Violence, she exclaimed. No, the drink you ordered hasn't arrived yet, right? If you're leaving without drinking, leave the payment. I kept my grip firm and called the police. This time, I wasn't wearing the heel. Despite her violent struggling, I stood my ground and eventually handed her over to the arriving officers. Given the resistance, my clothes were disheveled and buttons were torn off, but as a mother myself, I had my own unyielding pride. Finally, just before she got into the police car, I caught Anastasia's mother's glare, but it was nothing to me. I exhaled deeply and rolled my shoulders. Then I muttered softly, "Goodbye forever," and watched the police car drive away. Later, it was revealed not only had Anastasia been involved in fraud, but her parents were accomplices as well. What shocked more was that the names, backgrounds, accomplishments, and even her parents' information they had given were all lies. Their entire family were con artists. It turned out they had been committing crimes as a family, and they lost not just their money but their social standings as well. Apparently, there had been multiple victims before us, and our family was recognized by the police for helping with fraud prevention and the arrest. I felt somewhat embarrassed, but I hoped that this ordeal would somehow turn out to be a positive change for John. With the Smith family's misdeeds fully exposed, the stormy days passed, and we returned to a peaceful life. Burned by his experience with Anastasia, John decided to cool off and focus on his work for a while. It somehow reminded me of my younger days. After hanging the laundry, I spent some time gazing at the clear blue sky. Leaning on the balcony railing, I thought, even if not by blood, we're still family. Surely, just like my husband and I, beautiful encounters will come around again. Maybe it's time for a decluttering to make sure nothing gets sold off this time. As I pray for my son's happiness, I return to my normal life as a housewife. My name is Yvonne Irwin, 42 years old. Until last year, I worked at a cosmetics company, but I resigned due to my mother-in-law's injury. I started living with her to take care of her, and now I spend all day by her side. My husband, Tom, is a salesperson at a major pharmaceutical company, but he doesn't come home too late. Still, I'm the one who takes care of my mother-in-law all day every day. However, she has been cold to me since the beginning of our marriage. When we first met to introduce ourselves for the wedding, she harshly said, "You seem like a quiet girl. Can you really keep a household?" I've been uncomfortable with my mother-in-law since that first impression and have tried to avoid her as much as possible after getting married. So, when my husband asked me to take care of his mother, I almost cried. Please quit your job and devote yourself to taking care of mom. No way. What do you think of my job? Please. I'll help out after work and on weekends. Help out, huh? After being asked repeatedly by my husband, I eventually gave in. I gave up my career and now spend my days just for my mother-in-law. Sorry, I have an unavoidable dinner tomorrow, so I'll be home late. Again. You've been having a lot of these lately. Yeah, it's troubling me too. My bad feeling was right, and my husband began coming home late more frequently. Although he wasn't the type to go out drinking with coworkers before, he suddenly started, and sometimes came home in the middle of the night. Moreover, on weekends he would leave without saying where he was going. He said it would be different at the beginning. In the end, it's just me. I became increasingly frustrated with my husband. Still, if my mother-in-law had even once thanked me, things might have been different, but she only grumbled to be cared for by you. Moreover, it seems she was complaining about me to my husband. Hey, don't make mom do things she hates. Things she hates? You forced her to walk, didn't you? Are you talking about rehab? No. The doctor said to do it every day at home. Anyway, mom hates it. Do as she wishes. I started to wonder why I was even trying so hard. My mother-in-law injured her leg, so she needed help with bathing and moving around. Even though a helper comes once a week, it was just too hard, and I was reaching my limit. One day, as I was trying to get her out of bed, it happened. Here we go, ouch. A sharp pain shot through my back. I threw my back out. Thrown out back? Yeah. The doctor said I need to rest for a while. Who's gonna take care of mom? Huh? I thought he'd at least ask if I was okay. But there was no sign of concern from my husband. Now I have another person who needs care. You're useless. I'm not doing anything. I'm sorry. I lay in bed and covered my face. I didn't want him to see me crying. True to his word, he really didn't do anything. I pushed myself to do the housework. Please, I really can't take care of your mother right now. I pleaded with my husband multiple times, and finally, he agreed to call the helper more often. What a waste of money. He muttered. When my back started to get better, I noticed his cell phone left on the desk. It wasn't locked, and the screen was still on. I accidentally saw it, and it was a confirmation screen for a trip reservation. He had booked a weekend getaway for two at a hotel with spa. Hey, I accidentally saw this, but are you taking me on a trip? Maybe he does care about me after all. But that was a huge mistake. Trip? No way I'm going with you. What? I'm going with someone from work. It's your misunderstanding. How embarrassing, sorry. I felt utterly miserable. 2 weeks later, my husband left me and my mother-in-law and went on the trip. He left early in the morning, all excited, and I just watched him silently. Then the next day, as I heard a loud noise at the front door, my husband rushed into the living room looking frantic. Welcome back. What's up? Why are you so excited? I got a lover 18 years younger pregnant. Divorce me. What? Excuse the interruption. A woman, clearly in her 20s, peeked out from behind him. And you are? I'm Mirabelle from the same company as Tom. Your husband has always taken good care of me. She introduced herself with a bright smile, her skin glowing radiantly. So, of course, you'll agree. You don't have a choice. I paused for a moment, then said, "Fine. Then I won't be coming for the caregiving anymore." That's how it goes. After the divorce, my mother-in-law and I would be complete strangers. This Mirabelle would take over the caregiving instead. But my husband had an incredibly selfish argument. "No, you'll keep caregiving till the end. I'm skinny and have no muscle, I absolutely can't." "Right. If someone delicate like you did caregiving, you'd get hurt." He hugged Mirabelle's shoulder and pulled her towards him. He didn't care when I hurt my back. I realized there was no love left for me from my husband. That's fine, right? After all, you're unemployed. I might as well pay you something like minimum wage. That's impossible. Huh? What do you mean impossible? Are you refusing? Yes, it's impossible. Because your mother. Don't blame Mom. My husband slammed the desk with all his might. For the first time, my usually non-violent husband showed aggression. I instinctively stepped back. Getting smart with me, huh? You need this kind of treatment. He raised his hand above his head, about to strike me. That's when it happened. Stop it! My mother-in-law shouted loudly, stopping my husband in his tracks. Mom, you can walk? There she stood, using a cane and standing on her own legs. My husband was shocked to see his supposedly wheelchair-bound mother standing. Right now, that doesn't matter. What's going on here? Questioned by his mother, my husband snapped back to reality. She's saying she won't take care of you anymore. That's right. Because I've decided to go into a nursing home. A nursing home? My husband immediately glared at me. Are you trying to get rid of Mom from her own home because she's in the way? You heartless woman. How can you say that to Yvonne? I decided to go to the facility myself. What? Why are you defending her? Weren't you two always at odds? We've cleared up our issues. What issues? Yes, my mother-in-law and I had issues to deal with. I couldn't move my body as I wanted because of my injury, and I inadvertently took it out on Yvonne. But even so, she continued to care for me. During a bath, my mother-in-law suddenly apologized to me. I too was terribly bullied by my mother-in-law in the past. I always thought I wouldn't do the same, but the more conscious I was of it, the less I knew how to behave, and I ended up treating you terribly. I also gave up on our relationship too quickly just because you treated me coldly at first. I should have made more of an effort to bridge the gap. After we resolved our issues, my mother-in-law started to frequently say thank you. As our conversations increased at home, my mother-in-law became more cheerful. I initially hated the idea of rehab, but I thought having such negative thoughts was just boring. I felt like I was wasting the rest of my life, so I decided to really commit to it. Now, I can even walk short distances without a cane. You wouldn't know since you've been using drinking and trips as excuses to stay away from home. How does that relate to Mom deciding to go to the facility? It's good that Mom can walk a bit now, congratulations. Saying this, my husband clapped his hands slowly, as if mocking. My mother-in-law, faced with my husband's frivolous attitude, said firmly, "To free Yvonne." What's that supposed to mean? It's like you're saying she's been imprisoned against her will. Well, isn't that the case? You pushed her to take care of me alone while you messed around. Enough with the jokes. I'm not joking. Mirabelle and I are seriously dating. That's right, that's why we're planning to get married. Shut up, you mistress. What? How can you say that to Mirabelle? You're the reason I decided to move into the facility. That way, even if we divorce, Yvonne won't have to take care of me anymore. I didn't want to burden her any further. When my mother-in-law first told me this, I said she didn't need to worry about me and didn't have to move into a facility. But once she made up her mind, her decision was firm. I've decided to use the money from selling this house and my savings to move into the facility. You won't get a penny from me. You sold the house? My husband gaped, repeating my mother-in-law's words. Yes, it's an old house, but it sold for more than expected because of its good location. What, you really sold it? Are you kidding me? What are we gonna do now? I was planning to kick Yvonne out and live here with Mirabelle. In my husband's mind, he probably saw a future of living happily in this house with his new wife. But that dream quickly shattered. So we can't live in this house? Where are we supposed to go? Mirabelle grabbed Tom's arm and started complaining. Tom said we wouldn't have to pay rent because we have a house, and we'd eventually get your mom's estate, so it didn't matter if I didn't work too hard. I quit my job, you know. You quit your job? When did this happen? As soon as I found out I was pregnant. And you did that without discussing it with me? What? You want a pregnant woman to work? No, that's not what I'm saying. The conversation between the two veered off in a different direction with no signs of returning. Just as I was about to intervene, Tom looked towards his mother. Why would you make such an important decision without consulting me first? I'm your son. You should have talked to me, not her. If he had known, he would have done everything to stop it, wouldn't he? Does he really not understand that? You too. Me? Suddenly pointed at, I tilted my head. Yes, you. Why didn't you stop her? Yvonne tried to stop me. But I was the one who wanted to go to the facility. Blaming her is completely wrong. Tom seemed frustrated, his lips quivering as he ran out of ways to blame me. I shouldn't be the one to say this, but the way you treat Yvonne is truly awful. That's why I've been saying I want to free her from this house ever since I found out you were cheating. Mom, you knew? Since when? About a month ago. I thought your behavior was suspicious, so I hired a private investigator. They delivered evidence to the house when you were at work and Yvonne was out shopping. My mother-in-law had managed to hire a private investigator through online searches and had the evidence of Tom's affairs shown to me beforehand. You were eventually going to tell Yvonne about the divorce, and when I move into the facility, she can be free. It was all part of my plan. Even so, going to a facility you didn't want? Oh, I never said I didn't want to go. After visiting the facility she was planning to move into, my mother-in-law actually liked it very much. Being a sociable person, she seemed excited about being in a place where she could meet others her age. And this facility is practically like a condo. It has 24-hour nursing staff, each room is a private room with a lock, and the privacy is perfect. How much does such a luxury nursing home cost anyway? That's a secret. Don't mess with me. Tom suddenly raised his voice at his mother. I could just keep leaving the caregiving to this woman and save all that extra money. What's this about a luxury nursing home? Such a waste of money. This house was left to me by my late father, and the savings are all my own doing. You have no right to tell me what to do. You foolish son. What? Faced head-on by his own mother, Tom looked as if he had been swindled. And she didn't miss the chance to strike again. You have no house, no inheritance coming. There's no point in staying with Tom anymore. Mirabelle? I mean, it's true, right? If there's no money, there's no benefit to being with an old guy like you. So you were just after my money? I grew up in a single-parent home, where I learned the hard way how important money is. And now this treatment? So you were such a shallow woman. What's wrong with being shallow? This is my life. I couldn't help but be a bit impressed with Mirabelle boldly stating her mind. Despite how she looked, she must have gone through a lot of hardships. Her straightforward admission that she was after money seemed rather tough and smart to me. Tom and Mirabelle's argument went on endlessly. But in the end, it was just the same things being said over and over, a completely empty fight. How long do I have to listen to this? I tried to stifle a yawn that almost escaped, trying to endure this situation. At that moment, my mother-in-law raised her voice with a force I had never heard before. Enough! If you're going to fight over pointless things, do it outside. This is already decided. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to the facility. That's final. Under my mother-in-law's pressure, the two of them stopped dead in their tracks. I also caught my breath in surprise. So my plans are ruined. And now I'm losing my childhood home, too. Can you believe this? Oh no, our marriage is off then. Mirabelle sighed as she told Tom. What about the child? You said you quit your job. There's no way you can raise a child alone as a woman. I'm going to terminate the pregnancy. Are you serious? Very serious. I just found out I'm pregnant, and there's still time to have an abortion. The abortion consent form requires a partner's signature too. I will never sign it. That's fine. I'll just get one of my guy friends to sign it. I won't allow it. Don't think you can just break up with me now. Tom seemed extremely invested in Mirabelle, his determination to remarry her palpable. Seeing her son like this, my mother-in-law staggered a bit, seemingly shocked. Mother, don't strain yourself. Please sit down here. Or would you like to go back to bed? No, I'll keep going until I sort out these two hopeless people. It seemed like her eyes were saying she'd do whatever it takes to drive Tom and Mirabelle away. Mirabelle, don't rush this decision. Think it over again, okay? Tom seemed to have switched tactics to gently persuading Mirabelle. He looked like a neighbor trying to feed a stray cat that's hissing at him. However, this approach only backfired with Mirabelle. Creepy. Annoying. If I said I'm going to do it, I will. I'm not marrying you. Don't make me say it again. There's no point being with a broke old man. Getting cocky just because I'm being nice. You, just a temp worker. Tom, outraged, raised his fist. As if he was going to hit Mirabelle. That clearly wasn't right. I quickly grabbed Tom's right hand that was about to swing down. What are you doing? Let go. She's pregnant. Violence is absolutely not okay. Shut up. No. Tom pushed me so hard that I fell to the floor. I almost hit my head on the corner of the dining table. Yvonne, are you hurt? I gestured to my mother-in-law to stay seated as she tried to stand up, and said, I'm okay. I just fell on my butt. So, this is Tom's true nature. Oh, no. Mirabelle hugged herself and put on a show of being scared. Good thing I found out before getting married. Otherwise, I'd be living in fear of violence every day. This was just a moment of anger. I don't normally do this. I'm serious, believe me. Tom then wrapped Mirabelle's hands in his own. Though it looked like a scene from a drama, in reality, it was just a 42-year-old man clinging to a 24-year-old woman. It was not a pleasant sight to behold. Enough already. Mirabelle forcefully shook off Tom's hands and stepped back from him. If you keep pressing this, I have my plans too. Plans? If things don't work out with you, I'll tell the company you forced yourself on me. Don't mess with me. We were officially dating. Besides, who would believe the word of a temp worker like you? With this, everyone will believe me. Saying that, Mirabelle pulled out her cell phone from her designer bag and began tapping on it with her perfectly manicured nails. Then a voice started playing from the phone. After work, let's go to a French restaurant. I've made reservations at a nice place. What is this? I planned to use this recording to blackmail you if things didn't work out. I never thought I'd actually need it, but here we are. You were recording our conversations. Tom's face went pale instantly. Sure enough, anyone listening would think Tom was seducing Mirabelle. The kids these days are scary. The audio continued to play. Thanks for your hard work. I'll give you a massage. How about we go out for drinks, just the two of us afterward? You're staying over tonight, right? Stop it, stop it. This is unfair. Your voice is cleverly cut out. You were keen on it too, weren't you? What are you talking about? You. That's not all. There's this too. Mirabelle manipulated her phone again, this time turning the screen towards Tom. Curious, I peeked over and saw it was a text message exchange between Tom and Mirabelle. I read aloud from the top. I had fun today. I'd like to go out for a meal, just the two of us again, not after work but on a weekend. Tom had sent this message, to which Mirabelle had not replied, probably to avoid leaving evidence. So, instead of replying to my messages, you approached me directly at work. I thought to myself, that's a clever technique to avoid leaving evidence while still giving the joy of direct conversation. Mirabelle must be quite the strategist. I'll make you regret deceiving me into thinking you had money. I'll submit this to the company and tell them that's why I resigned. Mirabelle was smiling triumphantly, her chin lifted. Please don't do that. My career, the position I've built up. I don't care. Goodbye. Mirabelle turned her back on Tom and stepped towards the front door. That's when it happened. The doorbell rang. Oh, who could that be? My mother-in-law touched her cheek and tilted her head, barely hiding a smile that only I could see. I'll go check. I took the initiative to head to the front door and welcomed the visitor into the house. We've been expecting you. Please come in, everyone's here. Hey, who's come now? We're busy, don't let visitors in at a time like this. Tom shouted from the living room. I led the guest in and headed back to the living room. Is that something you should be saying? I stepped to the left, revealing the person standing behind me. Mom? Mirabelle exclaimed in surprise. Mom? Mirabelle's? Nice to meet you, I'm Ellie, Mirabelle's mother. She greeted to all of us. By the way, she is 42 years old, the same age as you, Tom. 42? That means you had Mirabelle when you were. I had her when I was 18. Ellie, Mirabelle's mother, clearly had the presence of a strong woman, having raised a child on her own from a young age. Why is your mother here? Yvonne kindly told me everything. That you were trying to steal someone's husband after an affair. Mirabelle glared at fiercely, took a step back. Thanks to the mother-in-law who did the infidelity investigation, I found out it was you who was the other woman when my husband and Mirabelle went on a trip. I contacted Ellie during that time. Mirabelle, you didn't tell your mom you were involved with a married man, did you? As if I could say that. Are you stupid? Mirabelle. Damn. If Yvonne hadn't told me, I would have been deceived. Thinking my daughter was marrying a married man. Really, just like your divorced father. Ellie said sharply to Mirabelle. Apparently, Mirabelle's father had disappeared after an affair. I couldn't get child support, and since I didn't have much education, I had to work multiple part-time jobs to get you through high school, and this is the result? At Ellie's words, Mirabelle bit her lip and looked down. And you too, Tom. Yes? Called by name, Tom straightened up like a schoolboy. Did you enjoy dating a girl 18 years younger than you, even getting her pregnant while being married? Ah, well, that. Like a frog being stared down by a snake, Tom was frozen in place. I've wanted to have a proper conversation with you for a while, so I asked to be invited here today. I came as soon as I got the call earlier. Thank you for coming? Don't joke. Ellie slammed the table, causing Tom's shoulders to jolt in surprise. It was funny to see Tom, who usually works assertively at a major company, shrink in front of a woman his own age. You'll be held responsible for this. Responsible, you say? Child support, of course. Why do I even have to state the obvious? Mirabelle has said she won't marry you, so you'll be supporting this unemployed woman, right? Since you're the father of the child she's carrying. No, I was thinking of actually marrying Mirabelle. Absolutely not. Which is it? Our living room had turned into total chaos. Tom insisting on remarriage, Mirabelle refusing to marry, Ellie demanding child support, whether they would marry or not. My mother-in-law and I were completely out of the loop. Ellie finally put an end to the situation. I'm taking Mirabelle back with me today. Yvonne, Grandma, I'm truly sorry for any trouble we've caused. Ellie apologized to us. The only good thing was that Ellie turned out to be a sensible adult. Come on, Mirabelle. We're leaving. Wait, Mom. That hurts. Hurry up. You good for nothing. Ellie forcefully pulled Mirabelle's hand and left our house. The chaos earlier seemed like a lie as silence fell in the living room. Those of us left behind were quietly looking at each other, wondering who would speak first. Tom was the first to break the silence. Yvonne. He spoke awkwardly to me, clearly exhausted and defeated. Then, seemingly seeking sympathy, he said this. Should we try again? You must be joking. I'm not joking. I probably can't remarry Mirabelle. If things stay like this, I'll be divorced. You don't know how a single man is viewed in the workplace. So, it wasn't about loving me, but rather for his job, for himself. I'm appalled. How could you think I'd agree after hearing that? Don't you feel sorry for me? I might not even have a home to return to. Not at all? You're really a she-devil. If that's the case, then you are a real fool. Just because it benefits you, you get all cocky. Fine. Then at least convince your mother. Convince her of what? To stop her from selling the house. She might listen to you now. I will not. My mother-in-law spoke up. Why don't you speak up instead of whispering, so we can all hear you? Well, because... Pathetic. Yvonne, you can do as you please from here. Thank you, Mother. What are you planning to do? I took a piece of paper from the shelf and gently placed it on the table. Divorce papers. Sign them quickly. My section was already filled out. After a long pause, he signed, as if giving up with a trembling hand. Thank you. I'll submit these to the office. Thank you for everything up to now. Thus, our divorce was finalized. After the divorce, I continued to live with my mother-in-law and care for her until she moved into the facility and the house was handed over. Yvonne, truly, thank you for everything. As my mother-in-law spoke as if it were a farewell for this life, I smiled. Don't say such lonely things. I plan to visit you at the facility, so please don't refuse to see me. Oh, what should I do? My mother-in-law and I laughed over a warm cup of tea. By this time, her legs had improved further, and she could walk freely around the house with the aid of a cane. As for my ex-husband Tom, he managed to avoid having his affair exposed at work thanks to Mirabelle's evidence, but in return, he ended up living with Mirabelle and Ellie. Tom had no home to return to, so he had no other choice. It seems they decided not to terminate the pregnancy after all. But by the time the baby is an adult, Tom will be 60 years old. That's no joke. From now on, Tom will have to keep working for his new family. And then, I managed to get re-employed. The cosmetics company I thought I had left for good rehired me. After hearing from a former colleague that I was looking for work because of my divorce. I'm grateful to be working in a familiar environment again. Busy as I am, feeling like a part of society again is very fulfilling. Tomorrow I'm going to visit my mother-in-law, maybe I should buy some cream puffs. She really likes the ones from that shop. Today is Friday. I rush home carrying a gift for my mother-in-law. I wonder if she would like it. From now on, I've decided to enjoy life to the fullest, while also making time to visit my mother-in-law. I got a transfer at work, so we're gonna move next month. Does that mean I have to transfer schools? I threw this direct question at my parents. Then my mom burst out laughing and said, "It's just me, your dad, and your sister moving. We don't need a monster in the house." I was at a loss for words over such harsh comments that seemed unbelievable coming from my own parents. You embarrass us. Only your perfectly healthy sister is our child. When my father's transfer was confirmed, my parents, thinking of me as a burden because I was born without one arm, disappeared with just my sister. A few months later, I was left in the care of my grandparents. Well then, Dad and Mom, please take good care of Kristen from now on. Goodbye, Kristen. Despite the unlikely chance of seeing each other often, my parents left me with my grandparents as if they were just going on a 3-day trip. After seeing off my father, mother, and sister, I broke down in tears. Seeing this, my grandfather said, "Don't worry. They're the ones who'll regret this." 8 years later, I would come to understand the meaning of my grandfather's words. My name is Kristen. I am currently 26 years old. I've been living with my grandparents for the past 8 years. Today's lunch is your favorite sandwich. My grandma is a great cook, and among her dishes, her sandwich is my absolute favorite. Her homemade sauce is out of this world. Yay! Thanks, Grandma. It's delicious, I said with a smile. After finishing his meal early, my grandfather asked, "Aren't you going to play chess with me today, Kristen?" "I will after I finish Grandma's meal." "Just wait a bit." This is how it always is with my kind and talented cook of a grandmother and my chess-loving grandfather. It's not that my parents got divorced or died in a car accident. Both of them are alive and well, living happily with my sister. The main reason I live apart from my family is probably because of my arm. I was born without a left arm. It's a congenital condition. Having been born this way, I've never really felt it was a handicap. This is normal for me. But even though I see it that way, others reacted differently. In kindergarten, some children would cry when they saw my arm. In elementary school, when I went to school, kids would shout, "A monster with only one arm is here," or "She's not normal, she's a monster," and so on. Perhaps because of this, I didn't make any friends in kindergarten or elementary school. It wasn't that I was blatantly mistreated, but everyone treated me as if I were untouchable. Once I reached junior high school, my peers began to understand me better, and the teasing stopped. I even started making a few friends. However, some parents of my classmates often said, "That poor girl, missing an arm." I'm not pitiful. This is my uniqueness, I would loudly say now. But back then, I resigned myself to thinking there was nothing I could do about it. Yet, there was one person who always supported me. My older sister Angela. Angela was smart, kind, and fashionable. Every morning I struggled to button up my school uniform shirt with one arm. She'd say, "Let me do that for you," and helped me get dressed. After school, Angela always walked home with me, carrying my bag and offering her scarf saying, "Here, it's cold, take this," always looking after me first. What I loved most was when Angela did my hair. "There, your hair looks cute now. I tried braids today." "Thank you." "Wow, I'm so happy." "You're amazing, sis. You should be a hairdresser in the future." I would look in the mirror repeatedly, my eyes sparkling, while Angela proudly grinned. Being of that age, I was interested in fashion, but doing my own hair was a challenge with one arm, and I was always happy when Angela made it look cute. Most of all, I was happy because Angela seemed to enjoy doing it. We would watch our favorite idols on YouTube, draw pictures, play pretend, a truly close pair of sisters. But my impression of our parents was a bit different. Both of my parents cared deeply about appearances. From a young age, Angela and I were constantly told how girls should be, to the point it became grating. Dad would buy expensive cars to look good, and Mom dressed in beautiful clothes. Despite not being a wealthy family, my parents always stretched beyond their means, often grumbling about money at home. They also gossiped about neighbors, that person is divorced, or that child went to a good college, always overly concerned with appearances. Perhaps for them, my existence wasn't something to celebrate. Now I can bathe alone, but as a young child in elementary school, I couldn't. Either Angela or my parents would bathe me daily, washing my body and hair. Bathing with Angela was fun because she talked a lot, but with my parents, it was different. "All right, let's wash your hair," they'd say and roughly scrub my head. Sometimes their nails would hurt, or they'd leave soap in my hair, always careless. After washing, they'd throw a towel at me and leave without a word. At home, I could manage drinks from easy pour packets or the water dispenser, but when we were out, I sometimes drank bottled water. If I asked Dad to open it, he'd click his tongue before reluctantly helping me. Whenever I asked for help, he'd mutter, "What a hassle." I tried to accept it, but it still made me sad. Yet, I never disliked my parents. "What shall we do today?" "What would you like to eat, Angela?" "I'd like pasta." It's easy for Kristen to eat too. On Sundays, our family of 4 often dined out. I was indecisive and struggled to choose what to eat, so Dad, Mom, and Angela usually picked the place. I watch with a smile as the 3 of them discuss what they feel like eating, saying things like "I want to eat this" and "I'm in the mood for this today." While I enjoyed eating delicious food outside, what I cherished most was the time spent eating together as a family, happily facing one another. One day, while at a restaurant, I overheard a family seated next to us. "Mom, why doesn't that person have an arm?" It was a scorching hot day, and I was wearing short sleeves, which made my missing arm immediately noticeable. The child seemed genuinely curious. They spoke loud enough for us to hear. Then, what appeared to be the child's mother began to explain. "Hey, that person has a medical condition. Missing an arm is scary. Why don't they have it? Everyone normally has 2 arms. Why don't they?" "You shouldn't stare like that. They aren't normal, that's why they don't have an arm," the mother said. It's common for people seeing my arm for the first time to whisper about it. But internally, I felt a bit down, thinking, "Not normal? Well, this is normal for me." Hearing this, my sister Angela said, "Kristen, don't worry about it. You're no different from anyone else. Here, your favorite salmon, eat up," comforting me kindly. I tried to hide my feelings, but Angela could tell. Contrastingly, my parents began, "It's embarrassing, Kristen. Try to hide it more when we're out, right? You attract too much attention. We need to book a private room when you're with us." They were always overly concerned with appearances. This response wasn't surprising. But Angela scolded them, "Mom, Dad, how can you say that?" I was happy Angela stood up for me, but I didn't want her to fight with our parents because of me, so I intervened. "It's okay, sis, thanks. But I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I'll be more careful next time." "That's good. Eat up." "Okay." Angela looked skeptical, but I pretended nothing was wrong and continued eating. However, from that day on, I seemed to be left out of family outings. "All right, let's go. Kristen, you stay home." I was left home alone. At first, Angela thought it was just a coincidence that she didn't come, but as the weeks passed and it continued, she asked, "Hey, Mom, Dad, why has Kristen been staying home lately?" With a slightly pained expression, they replied, "Remember at the restaurant, the family next to us made fun of her?" It seemed to really hurt Kristen. Kristen's a girl of her age. If she doesn't want to go, we can't force her, blatantly lying. Still unyielding, Angela suggested, "Then let's stop going out and order takeout to eat at home together. It's more fun with Kristen around." Her words made me tear up a bit. She really is a caring sister. But my parents countered, "Angela, if we said we're not going because of Kristen, wouldn't that make her feel worse?" Exactly. It'd be sad if Kristen couldn't act normally. "Right, Kristen?" They looked at me sharply, pressuring me. Angela, standing behind my mother, couldn't see her face. Frightened by my mother's demonic expression, I shrank back. "You shouldn't defy your parents. I can't live on my own. I have to endure, to give the response my parents want." Feeling this way, I bit my lip hard and said with a forced smile, "Yeah, I hated being teased the other day. It's embarrassing when people stare. I'm more comfortable just watching TV at home, so don't worry about me, sis." "Is that so? All right." Angela seemed reluctantly convinced. Satisfied, my parents left the house with Angela. After they left, I tried to make a microwave pie by myself but struggled even to open the package. Why can't I even do this? I thought, as tears started to fall. From that day, my parents learned that I would comply without talking back if pressured, and they stopped taking me out not just for meals but also for shopping and trips. Is Kristen not going again? Looking sad, Angela glanced at our parents before saying to me, "Yeah. I'm sorry." I was often left with our grandparents during trips. My grandfather runs an IT company. Grandpa always lets me use the computer, and Grandma cooks delicious meals, making sure I have everything I need. I find such times enjoyable and refreshing. But the excuses my parents made to leave me behind were terrifying. "Sorry, Mom. Kristen keeps saying she doesn't want to go on trips. Can you spend a few days with her? Sorry for always being a burden. Angela is fine, but Kristen is becoming more rebellious. Please take care of her for a few days." Saying that, I was scared of my parents, who always seemed to lie to my grandparents as naturally as breathing. Yet, I never denied their lies. "All right. We don't mind. We'll take good care of Kristen. Have fun and take care," my grandparents said with smiles as they saw Angela off and warmly welcomed me. I waved goodbye to the three of them with a smile that held no real feeling. This had become the usual routine before family trips. One day, noticing my forced smile, my grandfather asked, "Kristen, are you really okay with not going?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I'd rather stay here with you and Grandma than go on trips," I said, trying to sound brave. But that was the truth. At first, I felt lonely being the only one not going on trips, but lately, I feel more at ease staying with my kind grandparents than with my parents. That's good. Grandpa and Grandma are always happy when you're here, Kristen. Come anytime. And if something bothers you, always talk to us, he encouraged me. At that moment, I didn't want to talk deeply about my parents. The thought of discussing them scared me, as it might make all my emotions come pouring out, and I didn't even know how to answer if asked deeply about it. So, I was grateful they let me be. Reflecting on it now, my grandfather must have sensed my reluctance and always made it easy for me to talk to them. Despite this, my parents continued to treat me coldly. Whenever people came over, they would say, "It's embarrassing to have you around, stay in your room," or even on the hottest days they would command, "Wear long sleeves when you go out so nobody sees your arm." To them, my existence was something embarrassing, something to be ashamed of. But I had Angela. That's what kept me going. However, even Angela, my only real support, was eventually taken away by our parents. "Kristen, this is too much. I'm done," Angela suddenly said one day, and she stopped doing my hair. She also stopped helping me with my shirts in the morning, only silently assisting with things I absolutely couldn't do by myself. Being treated coldly by Angela was even more painful than by my parents. If Angela abandons me, I will lose my place in this home. I decided to confront Angela directly. "Angela, did I do something wrong? Why do you ask? Lately, you've seemed cold. Did I upset you somehow? Don't you know? You know everything." With that, Angela slammed the door and went to the living room by herself. I had no clue what she was angry about. Then, my mother came to me. "Kristen, did you upset your sister?" "Yeah, but I don't know why." "Oh, playing dumb now, huh? Weren't you calling her the helper behind her back? After all she's done for you, that's pretty low." Disgusted by my mother emphasizing my disability, I denied it. "What? No, I never said that. I love Angela. I'm grateful to her, and I would never say such a thing. It was me. I told her you said that to your friends at school, so I got angry on her behalf. Naturally, she's upset." My mother's eerie smile sent shivers down my spine. "Oh, I see." I realized then. My parents must be feeding Angela lies to ruin our relationship. To her, our parents are kind and important. And she believes what they say. From then on, even when I tried to talk to her, Angela was cold. Not knowing what lies my parents had told her, I couldn't defend myself, and the rift between us deepened over time. Before, Angela would do things for me without being asked, but now she wouldn't unless I asked her directly. Gradually, it became harder to rely on her, and I truly felt like I had no one on my side. It became difficult even to go to the living room, and I spent most of my time in my room. As usual, I stay home alone on weekends. My sister Angela and my parents go out to eat and shop without me. We bought so much today. Everyone on social media will be shocked by these clothes, my mother said, flaunting an expensive-looking dress. The food was delicious today. Where shall we go next week? My father returned home cheerfully. It seemed like they were deliberately showing me how happy they were without me. But Angela was different. You should buy something too, Angela. I don't need anything. She always declined and never got anything for herself. Perhaps she felt guilty about getting something when I couldn't. Though we had grown apart, it seemed she still cared about me. We both should have talked openly, but we were both afraid to hear the truth, so we never had a real conversation. Thus, time passed without repairing our relationship. When I turned 17 and my sister Angela turned 18, I became fairly independent and could manage most things on my own without much help. At that time, I was going to school and also visiting and helping out at my grandfather's company. Angela was planning to attend a vocational school next year. She seems to be attending a vocational school in another state, which is quite far from where we live. One day, my parents suddenly spoke to me. "Kristen, we need to talk," they said with serious faces, giving me a bad feeling. That day, Angela was out at work and not at home. "I got a transfer. We're going to move." "Really? When? Do I have to change schools?" Taken aback by the sudden news, I bombarded my dad with questions. I had finally made some friends, and with graduation approaching, the thought of transferring schools made me feel a bit anxious. Then, my mom burst out laughing. "Kristen, you seem to be misunderstanding, but you're not coming with us. It's just me, your dad, and Angela." "What? What do you mean?" "Angela is going to a vocational school next year, right? And your dad's new job is also in the same state. So, it's just us going. We're selling this house too." "Then where am I supposed to live?" "You'll live with your grandparents. We've already told them. That way, you don't have to transfer schools." "But..." "No buts," my dad suddenly yelled. "How long do you plan to keep causing us trouble? We're fine with just your able-bodied sister. It's embarrassing to be seen with you." "That's right, we don't need a monster who isn't normal in this house." I was speechless from the cruel words that I couldn't believe came from my own parents. I always suspected they felt this way about me, that they didn't really like me. But hearing it said to my face felt like being stabbed in the heart with a sword. A few months later. "Well, Dad and Mom, please take good care of Kristen. Goodbye, Kristen." Despite the likelihood that we wouldn't see each other often, they left me with my grandparents as if they were just going on a 3-day trip. Angela glanced at me occasionally, seeming concerned but said nothing. I waved at them with a smile as usual. But as soon as they were out of sight, I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. "What's wrong, Kristen?" my grandfather asked, surprised to see his usually cheerful granddaughter crying. "Didn't you want to be apart from your dad and Mom?" "Yes, I didn't want to be separated from Angela, but I did want to be away from Dad and Mom." My grandparents looked at each other, shocked, apparently realizing what was happening. "What did they say to you?" "They said they don't need a monster." "How terrible. I can't believe it, it's just too much." Both were shocked and saddened. This was the first time I had ever spoken about my parents, and it felt like a dam had burst inside me, unleashing a flood of tears. Seeing me like this, my grandfather stood up as if he had made a decision. "Kristen, it's okay. You don't have to worry about anything. They are the ones who will regret this." "Huh?" It took me 8 years to understand what my grandfather meant by those words. 8 years after being abandoned by my parents. I now live with my grandparents at 26 years old. My grandfather has retired but still supports the company as a chairman. I started working at his company right after high school graduation. Angela finished vocational school and started living on her own while working. Living with my grandparents, I grew up free from discrimination and thrived. But as if to disrupt this peaceful life, a storm arrived suddenly. It's been a long time. 8 years, right? Kristen, you've grown up. The familiar, unwelcome voices made my skin crawl. These were the voices of the parents who had abandoned me. They had always received financial support from my grandparents. Because my grandfather ran a successful company and had the means to help, thinking of his grandchildren. Indeed, reflecting on it, it was strange how my ordinary parents could afford such luxuries. It seems they were using the money my grandparents gave for the sake of their grandchildren. However, the financial support stopped when Angela graduated from her school. For a while, my parents kept calling my grandparents asking for money, but eventually, my grandparents blocked them completely and stopped responding. Unable to maintain their lavish lifestyle without the support, my parents had accrued debts and struggled financially. Then they saw me on TV. I became the CEO of a company at the age of 26. Although it was a small company with just a few employees, I had started my own business using the experience I gained at my grandfather's company. Because of my early success, I was now featured on television and YouTube. And my parents, having seen on TV that I had become a CEO, thought they could perhaps regain the lifestyle they had when they received support from my grandparents by asking me for help, so they came all this way. Kristen, I heard you became a CEO? Sitting in such a fancy office, in that boss's chair, you're so cheeky. 8 years without contact, and upon their sudden return, they barged into my office with such audacity. Yeah, what do you want? I asked with a sigh. We're out of money and in trouble. You're a CEO, right? Give us some money. What? Grandma and Grandpa stopped supporting us, and we've run out of savings. Please, we're begging you. Give us a share, even just a little. No matter how many years pass, these people never change, I thought, utterly disappointed. I don't have any money to give you, I pushed back firmly. What? After we raised you, the least you could do is give us some money. That's right. After all the trouble we went through raising someone like you, you're so ungrateful. Raised me? You gave up on raising me because I was disabled. If this had been me as a student, I might have been too scared of my parents to resist giving them money. But I'm not that person anymore. Really bold of you to say that. You've always treated me terribly. I have nothing to say to you, can you please leave? What? How dare you speak to us like that? This is an order. Give us the money. They demanded, as if trying to extort me. But I would not be intimidated. If you keep this up, I'll call the police. Don't ever come near me or my grandparents again. I warned them, dialing 911 on my phone to show them I was serious. The word police remains a frightening threat at any age. Fine. We'll ask Angela then. We were fools to rely on a monster like you. They scoffed, storming out of my office. Just then, someone stopped my parents. Mom, Dad, what are you trying to ask me? Angela. They were shocked to see my sister, who they did not expect to be there, and were speechless. Next you ask me for money after Kristen, after you already tried our grandparents. I don't have any money to give to toxic parents like you. Toxic parents! They never expected such words from Angela. Their faces paled as they processed her words. I've known everything since 8 years ago when you separated from Kristen. I was shocked to learn how awful you were. At first, I was devastated, but relieved to hear Kristen never said anything bad about me. That's not true. She did say bad things, right, Dad? Yeah, Kristen always used to speak poorly of Angela. They lied, still trying to manipulate the situation. But Angela no longer believed their words. Still lying, how despicable. Well, I don't care. When I graduated from vocational school and realized I didn't have to live with you anymore, I was overjoyed. In fact, after we separated, I had told my grandparents about the rift with Angela, and they had explained everything to her. Thanks to them, any misunderstandings between us were cleared up, and we returned to being as close as we had been before. I had even offered Angela a job at my company, but she chose to pursue her dream of being a hairdresser, which she had since she was young. Still, she visits my company occasionally after work. Today, Angela was at my company after her shift when our parents loudly barged in. We had been talking, and to surprise our parents, I had Angela step out of the room. "Why are you two together?" "Kristen and I are still close. I don't want anything to do with parents who call their own daughter a monster." "Me neither. I don't want anything to do with you ever again." "No way." As our parents hesitated to leave the office, our grandparents arrived and said, "Our grandchildren don't want you here. Leave now. And we also will never interact with you again. Got it?" They scolded them with fury. While my grandfather stood boldly, my grandmother started chanting, "Evil's out, get out." It was such a surreal scene that Angela and I looked at each other and burst out laughing. Eventually, our parents were driven out and disowned by both our grandparents and us. I don't know where they are or what they're doing now, but when they stormed into my company, they were already burdened with debt, so I'm sure they're living a tough life. Curious, I asked my grandfather, "Hey, Grandpa, how did you know 8 years ago that my parents would regret their actions?" "Kristen, you've been coming to my company since you were a student, right? Even back then, I knew you were smart and quick to understand, always thinking on your feet. I always thought you'd grow up to be someone who could lead others," he explained. It warmed my heart to realize Grandpa had always been watching over me. "Thank you." "Oh, it's nothing. All of this is the fruit of your own hard work. You really did well." His words made me tear up again. A few days later, I was at Angela's hair salon. "I feel like a change, maybe a shortcut." "A shortcut for you? That's rare. Want to keep your usual beige color?" "Yeah, that's fine. Make it cute, okay?" "Got it," she said, and started cutting my hair. I had always thought Angela was meant to be a hairdresser since we were kids, and even now, as adults, she still made my hair look great. She truly is a wonderful person. "They're all done. Look how cute it turned out," Angela said proudly, making her signature proud face like she used to. "Thank you, Angela." And like this, Angela and I remained close.